You're listening to Pondering Pennies with Dempsy and Rae.
Okay, here we go for episode 4 of Pondering Pennies. We're kicking it off quick because Ray over here says he's got MILFs to go give his time to, make a good stepdad.
Whoa.
People say stepdad when they refer to Ray, but the only thing stepping in Ray's life is him to the challenge of raising another man's kid. This week we got another interview coming in for you. I don't know why I said another because it's the first one we ever done. So we got Otto here. He's a nurse over in the great state of New York. Otto, you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to want to become a nurse, what that was like in school, all that good jazz.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So back in high school, that was a little while ago now. The job market kind of sucked, if you guys remember, 2008, whatever. And the whole thing that I kept hearing was, you're not going to get a job. You got to do something that is always going to have a job. This, that. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I like helping people out. So that narrows it down to almost everything. And then I'm like, I've always been interested in healthcare. It's kind of corny, but like the untold stories of the ER on TLC and shows like that really I just thought they were interesting. And then my high school had this class where it was a health careers class. So we kind of dove in from everything to radiology techs to ultrasound techs to nurses to doctors, PAs, physicians assistants, PAs for short, and I was like, okay, I feel like I could go the healthcare route. I don't really know what I want to do, but I'll do it. And then from there, senior year of high school, the county that I grew up in, along with 3 or 4 other counties, had this like high scholars academic program where they took, I think there's 15 of us total. So 15 students from 4 surrounding counties. We all met for like the majority of our day. I mean, I was only in school for like an hour or 2. So anyway, we met and we did all of our like participation in government classes, economics, writing. And then that's for like the morning portion. Then in the afternoon, we had all of these rotations. So we did literally everything healthcare related. I mean, we went from dietary, housekeeping, and then we went up to seeing surgery, seeing live birth. So really when I was 14, 16 years old, had pretty much honed in on doing healthcare, for something for work.
So sorry to interrupt you, but what was one of the craziest things you've seen in those like in surgery things that they brought you to?
You know what? I really didn't see anything awfully crazy. I mean, they literally had like we were in obstetrics and gynecology or OB for like one day or 2 days. I did get to see a live cesarean section or a C-section. That was incredible. If nobody's ever seen a C-section being performed, video will do you just fine, but live, holy cow! Props to moms.
I can't imagine walking into class one day, walk in, their teacher's like, "Hey, we're gonna cut this guy's chest open and look at his heart." Like, I would never be able to do that. I would see that shit and I'd walk out of the room. I'd probably start puking. Not even gonna lie.
Yeah, well, and you know what? That's not an uncommon occurrence. Of course, is conversing with the nurses and the staff there, and they kind of have like a running joke, like, oh, we know, the guys who look tough and look like they can handle it, they almost know to just bring in a chair or be ready for him to fall. So that's kind of like a running thing that I learned in obstetrics is that sometimes the father figures are not always as tough as they seem to be. Because, I mean, for a lot of people, the sight of blood, the thought or the sight of needles, I mean, it's not uncommon for people to vasovagal or kind of pass out and lose consciousness briefly. I'm sure Dempsey can probably attest to that to some degree.
Yeah,
But
I don't know what it
yeah,
is for me, but personally, blood, guts, bones, open fractures, whatever it is, dead people laying on the ground, I'm good to go. The minute we're talking about excrement or puke, it's game over. I can't do it. I fold like a lawn
yeah,
chair underneath a Buffalo Bills, super fan during the playoffs. I'm just going down hard, never stood a chance.
yeah. You know what? I echo you in that. But my vice is dog vomit. That is, I don't know what it is. I grew up on a farm. I have seen many varieties of many different things. Dog vomit is just one of those things for me that I just can't. I mean, the mere sound of them throwing up makes me gag. I can't explain it.
So here's
For the
the
life
So-
of
real
me.
question then. The two dogs that you have,
Uh-huh.
are they grass eaters? Do they vomit a lot? Is this a struggle in your day-to-day life, or is this really not something you come across too often as an adult now?
My older dog who's 4, he his nose doesn't come off the ground very much. So when we're outside where we live, rabbits kind of come through, and they of course go to the bathroom. So sometimes I'm not quick enough, and he
Oh no, he's out here.
chows down a little bit.
He's out here eating the Easter bunny's little droppings in the front yard.
Yeah. So
Ugh.
yeah, it's not great. So sometimes he is the one to throw up. Our younger dog, who's about 3, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I've ever seen him throw up. So it's weird. It's weird how dogs are,
The oldest one is really only 4. I feel like that dog has been around forever. I don't know why, but I feel like I have like core memories at the age of like 21 cuddling that dog like hung over in bed trying to steal it away from you.
Yeah, no, he is a December 24th dog. So yeah, he just had his 4th birthday a couple 6-8 weeks ago.
It's crazy.
So yeah, time's flying. I mean, it seems like I just got him. And then
All right,
look at
so
him.
Otto, what is one of your? So, did you work in the ER at all?
So I will, in a way, yes, I will get to that in just a moment. So long story short, after high school, I went to nursing school down in Pennsylvania. And had a really good experience there. It was a smaller private school, so got a lot of attention. Some of these universities that I have friends who go to, or family members who've went to, and you kind of get lost in the you become a number, in classes. And this was never a place where I was a number. I mean,
There's
I
a
grew up
lot
in a
of
small school.
small schools in Western New York, like especially the SUNY schools and stuff. What made you not want to like knock out prereqs and stuff like that, like the first 2 years of school at some of these SUNY schools versus
Yeah,
just right off the bat jumping into the 4 year?
Yeah, so I definitely thought about that. Where I grew up, there were certainly, community colleges and SUNY schools that had, you know, had that available to me. Um, I kind of wanted just to go away. Honestly, I was like, I'm ready to go try something different. Not too far, but try something different. And honestly, through the scholarships I got through the school, um, it was very comparable or cheaper than some New York schools. So between the price and the distance and the program, it was a great fit for me. So
Nice.
So the ER then.
Whoa, you're jumping the gun. You're jumping the
What?
gun. The question
Am
that
I?
I really want to know: did you
hit me
feel
with it.
well? What was the vibes of the school? Right, like I feel like you hear a lot, with left leaning academia. Is that really not a thing in the healthcare field? Is there really no wiggle room for that? Or did you see like differences between your professors where you got some, person in economics pushing Marxism, and then you got somebody who's like, this is what psoriasis looks like, and they really aren't leaning one way or the other. You got like some crazy English professor that's like, tell me about the evils of capitalism.
I'm gonna be honest, especially with my nursing core classes. I mean, they were so strictly about nursing. I mean, all of them held doctorates, so they're all very educated and very good at what they did. They pretty much it was stick to the curriculum, teach us as best as they could, and that's really it. Now, when I did some other classes that I just wanted to do because I brought in a lot of credits from my high school, so I didn't have to do. I think I had to do one English class, and then I didn't have to
What a
do
nerd.
any Spanish or anything like that. So while people in my curriculum were, going through, college Spanish, I had some free time. So, like the guy I am, I loaded up on gym classes because, that's something I really enjoy. But then I also just took some, just like different humanity classes. Like I did an intro to Indo-Euro history class. Very interesting. Um, Professor was very well connected and established. Almost world renowned. He never bragged about it, but the stories he would tell me, would just be people would know who he was. um, and you know, even him, there would be times where you could kind of, if you read between the lines, maybe. But from my personal experience, there was no pushing of political agenda, alternate agenda, anything like that. But
Yeah.
again, me as a person, especially at that age, I was just like, I'm here for my class, I'm here for my grade. If you're funny, awesome. If you're not, well, it's only 50 minutes, sort of thing. So,
Well, that's good. It sounds like you, for the most part, or if 99.99% of it all had, regardless of what their beliefs were, they had no real agenda behind anything, and were just
yeah.
professionals there to do the job.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I think I don't know how, people are hired public versus private. I mean, you could guess, but I mean, being a private school, maybe you can be a little more selective. I have no idea. Um,
Yeah, I'm
so
sure too, like on a board private school, even though you said after scholarships and stuff, it was pretty reasonable. Like at the end of the day, it is for profit. So, I don't know what their
yeah,
salaries are or who's running the school, but maybe on
yeah,
the back end, their hiring criteria has to be like, all right, we don't want like any ideologues in here, like pushing some kind of agenda, deterring people.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I nothing that I noticed, and then just to briefly touch on, what the whole vibe was at my school. It was it was somewhere where you could meet someone new every day, but then you could also, see someone out on the weekend, be like, I go to class with you, and you would just hang out. The fraternity and sorority, situation at our school was pretty good. Um, they it was often like you're either in a fraternity or sorority or not, and then that was kind of like, oh, why aren't you in a fraternity or sorority? So I wasn't ever in one. I made some really great friends my freshman year, and I kept myself busy with other activities, sports, and stuff like that. So I never myself thought I could balance it because I had really good friends and still have good friends who were in fraternities and sororities. And, it was a lot for them, especially being nurses. I mean, I had friends who were in a sorority, a sport, and nursing. And let me tell you, they
God damn.
were always going. And, I wanted to go to college to, get an education, but then also kind of, explore myself and, make new friendships and, stuff like that. So could I have been in a fraternity? I'm sure. But at that point in my life, I was like, you know what? I'm content right now. Let's just keep going.
Too focused on the money, eh?
Something like that.
Too focused on the money. Do you know who Otto is? He is a dapper Dan, if you will. It doesn't matter if it's man, woman,
Oh
non-binary.
God. Oh God.
He is relentless. I mean, I remember hearing stories on a fishing trip one time about some of the potential mates in the classroom and how I'm just like they don't even know they don't even stand a chance. They're in the crosshair and he's gonna bag them. He's gonna bag and tag one way or another. And look at him now. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. The lime of his life, the twinkle in his eye is, one of the ones that he bag and tagged there.
Yeah.
Straight up fucking stud.
Yeah. I am what's the saying? You punch above your weight. That I definitely did that with my my wife. She is can't say enough good things about her.
Yeah.
In short.
And no one ever said he was, when he was swinging for the fences, he was throwing any haymakers. But I think we've all seen the Rocky movies, and Rocky pretty much just won because he tired out the opponent with his face. That's Kevin's life story right there. When it comes to love, he's just like, I'm just gonna wear him down till they don't feel like saying no more.
Oh my God.
All right, so I want to hear the juicy. I'm here for the juiciness. What is the craziest story you've like? What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you? Whether it was at urgent care, at the ER, whether it was in college, just going through the process of getting your bachelor's, whatever it may be that leads to nursing. What's the craziest thing you got?
Yeah, I can I got a few stories, kind of for college, and whatnot. So I'll start with college. So you asked me earlier about the ER. So in nursing school, you have typically, if it's a 4-year degree, you typically have a year, year and a half, 2 years of in classroom study. You'll have a little bit of clinical rotation sprinkled in there, but typically after the year and a half, 2-year mark, you are in clinical, on the hospital floors, learning actually how to be a nurse. At least once or twice a week. Now, every program is different, how they structure it, what have you. But I know basically at the year and a half mark, they really, and then the second year or two, and then on, really put it on. So when you're a senior, and like I said, this is just for my school, every school's a little different. We had some people call it a capstone, some people call it like a final rotation. So basically, you get a choice of where you want to work or where you want to do like an 8, 10, 12-week rotation. You can do surgery, you can do ER, you can do a floor nurse.
The insane asylum.
If you wanted to do psych medicine, of course you could. And I did have friends who did that. And they actually really enjoyed it. So I did the ER. Now, where I went to college, there was a very big hospital close nearby, a level 1 trauma center. For those of you who don't know, you can't get much higher, or you can't get higher than a level 1 trauma center. Anything emergent, I mean, like if you have a limb missing, you're going to a level 1 trauma center. If, depending on the cardiac capability of the hospital, if you have a heart attack and you need, any cardiac surgery or anything like that, typically a level 1 trauma center, like I said, typically is where you would go. So, we were the regional trauma center. So car accidents, any accidents where you had to be airlifted, that was our thing. 2 stories from the ER. I saw a gunshot wound to the abdomen. That was pretty interesting. It was small arms, so it wasn't anything big caliber. But the guy was not doing good.
Was it a clean
So
entry and a clean exit, or was the
It
projectile
was.
still
I do not believe there was an exit. Um, this person was pretty big, and I think it had to have been like a 9 mil. I mean, it was. I believe it was from a handgun, if I remember right. But he took one in the abdomen, and he was not doing great. So I was in the trauma room when they were working on him. So that was interesting. There's a lot of moving parts. You have the whole hospital team there. I mean, you have the doctors, you have the trauma surgeons, you have X-ray, you have lab, you have nurses, you have trauma techs. It's just crazy. But the good trauma centers, you can have 6, 8, 10 people surrounding a table, and it's just like everyone's moving. They communicate, of course, but I distinctly remember everyone just knew what to do. That's anywhere you
That's
work.
good to know. That's really good to know.
Yeah, so like anywhere you work, I mean, would you rather have to fight through, a stressful situation with your team, or would you want to be so honed in, so confident, competent, and not only your skills, but your team member skills? And for me, that was kind of like the first time where I was like, wow, like everyone here is just like on the same level, on the same understanding. And, it benefits the patients. And you know what? The level 1 trauma centers, um, you know, that's why they're the way they are.
What are your
So,
thoughts on
um,
I have some medical training. I'm not a nurse or anything, right? But for my training, I've
yeah.
done some clinicals and internships at hospitals on, AMR, terrible
Mhm.
ambulance company, but so I always thought it was very interesting, at least from the standpoint that I had for my training. It was like, all right, like it's clinical time, like go do what we talked about in class and practice on some dummies and stuff. It's like, okay, now you're gonna like this person that's having a real issue, like you're gonna stick them now, set up the IV, or you're gonna go calf this person now, or you're getting the crash cart for whatever reason. For
Mhm.
nurses before they hit those clinicals, is there a long shadowing period, or do you feel like at a certain point, like it's just like you either show up or you go home and you just kind of get thrown to the wolves, and it's like, all right, you're here, put in place what you've read from the book?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So every nursing degree, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year, um, the prep for it is a little different. Now, I was very lucky in the fact that we had, they were called lab hours. So we had an extensive training area, is essentially what it was. I mean, we had mannequins that did all sorts of things. We had simulated mannequins. So we had actually one of the professors was um, was in charge of running these clinical situations. So we had a mannequin that could have a heart attack, that could have a stroke, that could kind of just become like altered level of consciousness, not make any sense or something like that. Um, so they did really well, I think, in terms of preparing me for certain situations. Now, when I speak about this mannequin, it's not just something that doesn't talk. They actually had an intercom and like a two-way or like a one-way screen or a mirror where they could see us and then they could just say whatever they wanted. So it sounded like you're talking to a real person, but you're acting upon this mannequin. So they had all sorts of fun situations, and like I said, I was very fortunate. My institution had a great lab, and that was one of the reasons that kind of pulled me in. They had a mannequin that could give birth. So
What?
you went through the whole process of birth. So that was something that was kind of cool to me, who never really had any interest in obstetrics, but to kind of be able to just see it in a very neutral zone, was nice, because on my obstetric rotations as a male, you know what? People are uncomfortable, especially with strangers, and it's a young guy. You know, it's human nature. It's a very vulnerable moment. Um, for father, mother, everyone involved, and to have I was young. I mean, holy cow, I was 20 years old, 19 years old, 21 years old. I mean, a young guy be like, hey, I'm the nurse. I'm going to, watch everything, or can I help you out? Some people, just didn't prefer that. And you know what? That's okay. That's the thing with healthcare, is that, there's some things you got to do, but then, you got to let patients have their say. So that was all good.
And when you say there was some people that weren't about that, did they just straight up like ask you for their personal reasons for privacy, like, hey, can you leave, or did they ask you just like not to assist and you were just kind of like standing there watching?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the nursing staff was really good about saying, hi, I have a male student today, would you be comfortable with him following me around, learning about obstetrics? And you know what, a lot of people said okay. I think there might have been only one or two people, and you know what, that's okay, because it's like I said, it's at the end of the day, as long as it's not something life or death, they're allowed to have their choice, and I don't blame them. So but
Was there any moments during your clinical when you hadn't really practiced anything that like kind of crazy caught you off guard? Because it also seems like the program like kind of pay for what you get, right? So like me practicing delivering babies and stuff was like just a mold of somebody's pelvic region, and then just somebody standing above it like squeezing a baby through for practicing. And I go through training, take some vacation back home and stuff. I go to my first job. I'm working the job, going on medical calls for 3 or 4 months, and then you know boom, baby's being born. Like you gotta perform, you know what I mean? Like you're here now, there's no wiggle room for that. Or everything was very low tech or no tech. So go on a couple months of like banged up bruises and boo-boos and stuff, and then next thing you know, some dude puts a shotgun in his mouth, pulls the trigger, you show up, he's still breathing and stuff, and you're like, okay, I guess haven't had this happen before, haven't really trained for this too much, but I guess we're dealing with this now.
yeah, no. And you know what, I don't remember specifically like skills that I was like, wow, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I definitely in school, and I don't even think in practice, I can't say I've ever fully done something that I don't know what to do, because the thing with nursing is that you're usually not alone, whether it be there another provider, another nurse, you know, everyone has a lot of different experience. And being a younger guy myself, I work with nurses who are 20, 30, sometimes even 40 years older than me. And as a young nurse, I learned very quickly your coworkers are there to help you, and you are there to help your coworkers. Now, that sounds kind of cheesy and corny, but you know, it's something that just young nurses will learn the easy way or the hard way. And I chose the easy way. So, being helpful, wanting to learn, at my first job really, solidified who I am today in that instead of maybe seeing things that, you know, man, I don't really like this about that person. Instead, if you frame it in that this person is really good at this and I'm not good at this, let's see if they can help me understand this more. And that's kind of been my mindset, in the working field is that, you know, you don't have to love who you work with, but you need to be able to work with them. It's obviously a plus and preferred if you really like the people you work with, but um, you know, going in, doing a job, making sure people are safe, those are my goals every day. So, but back to the stories. So after high school, after college, graduated, moved up to Western New York, took my first job at a local hospital, and that was it was tough. Worked night shift, and you come out of nursing school, and like I said, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, despite all the training, despite all the clinical hours, you walk into your first day of your job and you're like, man, I am responsible for these 4 or 5 people tonight. Like, if a doctor comes and asks me like what's up with this patient and I don't know, oh man. Like, so it can be scary. I remember feeling um not really scared, but maybe just not confident in my abilities. I mean, in college when I had another nurse that was essentially responsible for them, and I was kind of just like a helper. That's easy because you can just lean on your preceptor or whoever. But as a nurse, once you're off your probation period or your training period, which is good. I mean, you usually get, I think I got like 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks of preceptorship. Um, so even after that period, it's very common for nurses to feel not confident. You know, at least I did, and I have many friends who were nurses who we chat occasionally, and they just are like, "Man, look at us now." That
Yeah, I
sort of
mean,
thing.
dude, I can tell you for sure. If I like going through all the schooling and everything, and they just threw me on a job right away and was like, "Yep, you're big grown up now," I'd be like, I'd probably laugh at them and like I'd joke it off, be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Yeah, I would. There's so many different parts of the body and how everything connects, dude. I don't know that shit. Like I've never really looked into it, but I know there's that. You got like what, like 28 bones in your hand or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like
Yep.
I wouldn't know any of that. I barely even know what my brain is.
Yeah. So I mean, like nurses, we specialize. So I specialized in like neurological, and meaning strokes, sometimes dementia, sometimes depending on the situation. Any um, any like brain surgery, whether it be taking out a tumor. Sometimes because of trauma, you have to have a craniotomy, and meaning that you you take the skull off someone's head to relieve pressure, because the body just through trying to maintain homeostasis is just pressure and pressure and pressure, and sometimes they have to take part of your skull off. So I dealt a lot with that in my first job, and it was scary. I mean, I've never worked in an ICU. I've never worked in an ER. Those nurses are built different. They have so much stress, so much multitasking ability that's awesome for them. I the position I worked was kind of like an intermediate floor where you had three, four, five patients, which was not a whole lot compared to like other floors, but these patients were straight from the ICU or sometimes straight from the ER. So, it wasn't uncommon to, have a patient kind of crash on you and rapidly.
Oh, wow.
So I think where I was a perfect spot. Looking back, of course, to kind of set myself up, for where I'm at right now. Um,
So,
You ever find it weird? Some some of the decisions that are made in the clinical setting. Like I remember a handful of times during some of my clinicals. Uh, for example, like the very first one I did. I don't remember what happened, but somebody was coming in with some traumatic event and had several broken bones, and one of them was a open fraction femur. And when we're setting up and everything, somebody looks at me and they're like, "Hey, grab the crash cart." And I was like, "Grab the crash cart." They're like, "Yeah, grab the crash cart. We're going to be pushing ketamine." And in my head, I was like, why do we need a crash cart? They're not like in cardiac arrest. They didn't have a heart attack or anything. Like this is like a purely trauma event that's going on right now. Why do we need a crash cart? And obviously the dialogue we had was much shorter than that, but they're like, well, sometimes when we press ketamine, people go into cardiac arrest, so we need the crash cart. And in my head, I'm like, why don't we just push a different drug then that maybe doesn't do that when this dude's already like pretty jacked up? Like, has anyone thought about that maybe?
yeah, like I said, I've never worked at an ER or ICU, but man, they do love ketamine from my friends and who've worked at an ER. You know what? It's a risky take. I mean, with some other drugs that maybe affect the respiratory drive or your body's natural just want to breathe. Sometimes if you push those drugs, then they're not breathing. So, sometimes that, ketamine, maybe morphine, maybe Dilaudid, it really is dependent on the situation. Something like an open fracture like that. I mean, ketamine, I guess I'm just spitballing here, probably was a starting thing. I don't know how this ended up, but sometimes they'll start with that, see how a patient goes, and then add others as needed. But um, it's funny that you brought up the code cart, because that usually means that someone has been burned once. Like being prepared is another thing I learned for anything is like almost paramount in healthcare. I mean, unfortunately, maybe one time they pushed ketamine and someone went to cardiac arrest and they're like, oh my God, where's the code card? And wasted maybe, 50, 20, 30, 45 seconds, so
Yeah, that was probably the first time that they had that happen to them, so they didn't have that breadth of
yep.
experience to lean back on.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to like just, you know, um, being educated, you know, book wise, but then also taking, using your coworkers, your friends who are also the same field and, conversing with them and just because, knowledge is power. I mean, you guys know that more than anything. So, the more experience that you have, the more experience that happens to you, the more you share it with other people. I mean, it's only really going to help. Unless, of course, it's a bad experience, and then, well, that's
that fucking
neither here nor
sucks.
there. So,
Yep. In my head, when it happened, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop asking questions. I thought back to the time when one of the lead dudes at work was like, "Hey, put your stuff on the truck. We're going." And I was like, "Oh, where are we going? Where are we going? What's happening?" He's like, "Oh, no one told you." I was like, no one told me where we're going. He's like, "Okay, cool. I guess that means you don't need to fucking know. Put your shit on the truck." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yep, sure. Yep. I'm gonna do that right now. Lowest man on the totem pole. Whatever you say, sir." Um, So I was like, "Well, yep, just go get the crash truck or the crash cart, and get right back here." And sure enough, that dude coded too. And I was like, "Well, he's just not. It's not his day. He's just not the guy. He is not the guy."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Dear Lord, this man's got every problem under the moon going on."
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, talking with nurses that have more experience than me. I'll try and not call them old. I'll just say they have more experience than me. Um, you know, I would talk to them because I was pretty stressed out in my first job, and I said, "Has it always been like this?" It's kind of like the age-old question. Has it always been like this? And they were very honest with me, and they said, "Kevin, I just doxed myself, but that's okay. It's not it's not what it used to be. It's not what it used to be." And I'm like, "Tell me. Tell me." And they said the acuity of patients is a lot different. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" They would be, "Oh, we used to have, 10, 15 patients." And I'm thinking to myself, I can barely handle 5. Like, what is going on? And and I was like, that's crazy. Like, how did you do it? They're like, "Hey, all my patients used to get up and walk to the bathroom by themselves. Half of them had IVs. A third of them were going home the next day." you know and hospitals nowadays, just everyone is so sick. But that also, on the opposite coin, is that people are taking care of themselves more at home. Chronic conditions, um, you know, kidney disease. If people have to use dialysis, there's outpatient centers, there's, home dialysis. So the acuity of patients has changed. And like I said, this is strictly just info that I've gathered just from my coworkers who, like I said, have had.
When you say acuity, not to cut you off, but can you
Yes, of course.
define that just for people that don't have any kind of medical background?
Yeah, so acuity is basically how sick someone is. Um, if someone has a low acuity, they're more than likely very stable. All their vital signs, so their blood pressure, their heart rate, their oxygen level, everything is, stable, straightforward. Medium level acuity um, is what I saw a lot of when my first job, in that, sometimes people's blood pressures would fluctuate up and down. I'd have to kind of mess with blood pressure meds and fluids to kind of keep them either down low or lower than they were, or, well, in some cases, higher than they needed to be. So, that's medium level acuity. So that's kind of like the intermediate floors where, you know, in your group, so like when you're working a hospital, it's you have a group of patients. Your assignment, sometimes they'll call too. And I had 3, 4, 5. So typically they'll assign your group or your assignment based on acuity. Okay, this person has a lot of medications. They've kind of been unstable today. We're not going to give someone 2 of those patients. You know what I mean? Because then you're just bouncing back and forth between 2 patients, and then, hey, you still have 2 other patients that need stuff too. So when you're a nurse in a hospital, on a floor, I should say, I mean, ER, I believe it's a little different than ICU. It's the same in a way, but you have less. You usually have like 1 or 2, or hopefully not more than 3 people. That's a little different because everyone's most of the time critical in the ICU. So on my floor, you kind of had like 1 or sometimes 2 people that were low acuity. You almost always had at least 1 person who was medium. And then sometimes you'd have a high. So high is like, you're thinking to yourself, man, why did they come here? They should be in the ICU. or they've kind of been giving you a little issues all night, blood pressure, or maybe they're acting a little different, and you consult a doctor. You say, hey, I don't like how this person's looking. And sometimes it wouldn't be uncommon for me to send people to the ICU. Sometimes they came over earlier on the shift and then maybe they decompensated, or sometimes for the ER, if they made their assessment down there, we're like, okay, they can go to my floor, perfect. And they did a lot of juggling with like ICU beds and all that stuff, and that's a whole different that's a whole different convo. But yeah, so ensure acuity is how sick someone is, and to a lesser extent how much work a patient is. I don't like to say that because that sounds kind of like, oh, this guy's work, blah blah blah. But
We lost them again.
Imagine not just like moving your mouse around every once in a while.
but
You've seen it here first, ladies and gentlemen. We all thought Ray was bad with technology. But
Otto is
Otto
playing
punching for the moon again.
That's right. I
fucking
always try and be number one. Don't you guys know this about me? So
Competitive spirit. It doesn't matter if it's Call of Duty, soccer, or just completely derailing a podcast by putting his computer in. For the most part, when it comes to the charge nurse for your floor or for your area, did you ever run into any problems where you just had like a brand new person or an experienced person that wasn't well suited for balancing, like, hey, these 5 patients are a cakewalk, so this person can handle all 5, but this person really needs some attentive care, so we're just gonna give Otto just this one patient versus Joe Schmo these 5? Or is it kind of like everyone gets 3-4 patients regardless of how much care each one needs?
So in my first job, it was you couldn't be like one person has like 2 patients and the other person has like 5. It was very rare that people like you would like we never discharged. I work nights. You typically don't discharge people on nights, at least from my floor. And you would often send people to another floor, so to a floor that has a lower acuity of patients, and then in turn you would be getting someone from the ER or someone from the ICU. So there never really was, in terms of like pure numbers, like 5 and 1, or 6 and 3, or 6 and 2, or something like that. But my other job, that's before my current one, had a special patient population in that this person could only be 1-to-1, meaning that one nurse, one patient. Sometimes you'll see that, in ICUs with a really, really critical patient. Obviously in the ER with a trauma, I mean, it's definitely more than 1-to-1. But anyway, these people would need like hourly urine outputs, at least 3 to 4 vital signs, at least an hour or bi-hourly head to toe assessment. So those people on that floor that I worked on, those nurses only took one, and I would have like 4 or 5. But typically it's everyone's got the same amount. But in terms of like, oh, like give Kevin this one, or oh, give whoever, give Jerry this one, or oh, Susan's been so mean to me lately. Like, I go back to the you want to be, you don't have to enjoy people who you work with, but it helps. In a big hospital and a big floor, the chances of you encountering people that maybe don't work well with each other just increases. That's just, percentages. Um, so I was, I would say more on the good side of most people. I don't think people took any joy in giving me a bad patient. Um, can't say that's true for everyone I've worked with. Especially my first job. There's definitely some people who made it pretty clear where they stood.
So where were you March 2020 when when the world changed?
Oh
Real
my.
question.
So I was still at my first job actually. Um, and that was such a weird time because man, just boom, we're like, wow, this is real. And I remember just like all these, it wasn't emails, but like our manager was in and just, not carrying on, but just being like, okay, like this is what's happening. This is what we're doing right now, you know, um, and it kind of just, I don't know. It just seemed like all hell broke loose. And because it was March 13th, it was Friday the 13th. I'll never forget it. I have younger family members who are still in high school at this point. I'm like, wow, Friday the 13th, man, they are just done now. So it was scary, for sure. I left, so I didn't have a whole lot of experience in hospital with COVID. I took a travel nurse position. Um, looks like I think it was, man, what was it? July or August. So it we were kind of in that the initial first wave. The summer went down a little bit, so I'm sure you guys remember, the ebb and flows of COVID. So where I went to work in the summer, um, my floor actually was not allowed to have COVID on it, which for basically the reason of we had special surgery patients on the floor. So we had to be like extra, like no infection on the floor. Um, so I kind of lucked out. I did not know that when I took this position. It was a travel contract. I did not know that. I showed up and I'm like where's the COVID patients? And they're like, oh, we don't get those. And I'm like, what? Like I was fully kind of ready, to at least see it in some degree. And I didn't work with COVID patients until I think it was October of 2020. So after that travel contract, and ever since I've worked with COVID patients probably every single day, whether I knew it or not. So
Yeah, I remember
it's
March 2020. I was in a class to get IV certified in the state that I was currently in.
mhm.
And I remember, everyone was hearing about it, and I think it was like February the first case had hit the U.S. and stuff, and they were starting to kind of get cognizant of like what things they were putting in place during the class, and we were like wearing masks in class and social distancing and stuff in class, which looking back at it was so weird, right? Because we're going to social distance during the instruction and everything, and then it's like, all right, now everyone get really close and poke each other with needles.
Yeah,
um
yeah, I'm sure that was
I'd be
weird.
sitting on my lunch break and stuff, and have the TV on, and the stock market's like plummeting 10% a day, and I'm like, what is actually going on right now?
Sell,
Like
sell,
people
sell,
are
sell.
people are losing their minds. Like, what the heck
Yeah.
is going on? Did you feel? So I know definitely on my end. So after the IV class and everything, I was, in charge of our medical program where I worked, right? So a lot of what I did was procuring the equipment and, the expendables, especially that we used. And it was like overnight. N95s became the next gold rush. Like N95s just could not procure them. Gloves could not get them. Hand sanitizer, like, was praying like another, hard liquor manufacturer would switch over to hand sanitizer so we could get some more hand sanitizer. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy times. I mean,
China.
it it's so funny you mention that. N95s. So when you typically any job in nursing, you get fit tested for N95s. I remember vividly at my first job. So this is back in 2018. 2018. I did my fit test and they gave me my N95 and they're like, "Oh, you'll probably never use this. Just stick it in your locker and you'll have it." And I was like, "Okay." So I did. I was like, "Okay." I stuck it in my locker, and for the longest time, I used that N95 when everything was, you know, anytime I tried to not go into situations, that, were a lot of people or anything like that. But when I did, man, I took out the old trusty N95. So, but yeah, I could definitely echo the equipment shortages and
It's funny that you say the equipment shortages. I was doing construction when COVID happened, and they were like, yeah, it's only like I forgot the fucking word. I'm so dumb. They were just like saying it's like only essential people can work right now, right? So like construction was pretty essential, I guess, or essential enough. So they kept us working the whole time. But with construction, you got dust, you got all these things, all these particles in the air when you're knocking down these buildings or whatever you're doing. So they had a stockpile of N95s, like a massive supply of them. And we got them cheap from our contractor guy because we were pretty tight. But I would I would hit up my mom. I'd be like, "Hey, mom, it's Friday. Like, do you need anything?" And she'd be like, Do you guys have N95s?" I'd be like, "Oh, hell yeah! Like, we got a fuck ton of them. Like, I'll grab like 10 boxes. I got you, mom." I'd hit up my dad. I'd be like, "Yo, dad, you need anything?" My dad would be like, "Yeah, a box or two when it hurt." So I grab a box or two, and I had like at one point I probably had like 25 boxes of them just chilling in my car. And at one point I was like, "Listen, I'm already making decent money doing this construction stuff, but I could sell these N95s and make a fuck ton of money." But I never did it. And
It's a good thing you didn't. If you didn't know, now that would have been highly illegal to price gouge during a pandemic.
Oh, no. I was going to do it on the side. Side business.
It doesn't
Kinda like a
matter if
drug
it's
dealer.
full time or side business. Legal activity is still an illicit activity.
Listen. It's kind of like a drug dealer, I could do it on the side. I could make up a quick little profit quick.
Oh my
Not tell anybody.
Before Ray here further incriminates himself in any way, shape, or form, we are coming up on
What?
the 1 hour mark here. So take a quick restroom break and hear a word from Pondering Pennies' first sponsor.
If you enjoy listening to Pondering Pennies and want similar content, check out Almost Everything. Almost Everything features two Australian mates, Tim and Lewis, who discuss their week and provide their valuable input on what's happening in pop culture. Almost Everything features conversations with guest listeners who discuss genuine dilemmas while Tim and Lewis try solving the issue. Search Almost Everything Podcast on whatever podcasting platform you use and go check them out.
All right, we're back from that bathroom break and philosophical thing that just hit me during that. If you think about it, not every pee-pee time is a poo-poo time, but every poo-poo time is a pee-pee time. Pretty weird.
That is
Mind blown.
That is pretty fucking weird, not gonna lie.
Mind blown. So, shortages, right? I think it was pretty eye-opening to a lot of people to realize like just how much made in China really means, and that a lot of our medical supplies come from China. So obviously, I am doing a different job now than I was when COVID first kicked off for that first year. So I'm removed from the medical scene right now. Have you seen a change at all in standard practice where China's zero COVID policy? If one person in a town gets COVID, they lock that whole thing down, and that's why we see these ongoing problems with logistics around the world and supply chains and stuff. Have you seen anything in the medical field where people are learning from, past failures where we're relying on this one sole source for a majority of our products, that not only is that a single point of failure, but hey, this is also an authoritative dictatorship that can just snap their fingers and do whatever they want and wreak havoc on the supply chain? Or are we just, continuing to hit our head against the wall, and the next time something like this pops off, we're just doomed to repeat the past?
I can't speak a lot to like the logistics of that. My current job now has always been pretty good at getting supplies in, whether it be N95s or testing supplies or gloves or all that stuff. And I think part of it was that it was just like the all at once thing, and then 2021, 2022, people I don't want to say we're like stockpiling, but kind of were like making sure that they had the necessary supplies, and preparation, like I was talking about earlier. Just, I mean, it was something that they really hadn't dealt with before, and at least from my perspective, for my for who I work with, they took that seriously, and they've you know I don't think anything like that will happen again. Now, in terms of like broader, like the country, I have no idea I don't know if there's a nation stockpile in terms of like medical supplies, medical equipment. I mean, would it be a good idea? Probably, but you never know how viable, I guess, that is. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a balancing act, right? Too, because if we do have and if I remember, I could be wrong, our we were supposed to have our first fact checker on the episode working behind the scenes as well, but allegedly she bailed on us because she was tired from working this week. Hashtag
What?
I know I'm not trying to throw any shade. She's a lovely woman. She puts up with me, she meal preps, she does all those things. Putting up with me should be its own reward in and of itself, but allegedly
Got a point.
allegedly bailed on us this week. But I'm pretty sure when the pandemic first hit, the government was getting a lot of flack because we do have like things put in place for pandemic situations, and there's supposed to be a national stockpile of some of these, basic expendable items like N95s that can be dished out through FEMA and stuff. And for however many years under Trump, or Obama before him, or even going back to Bush before him and Clinton before him and then the other Bush before him, however far back it goes, there was a line of the federal government neglecting that stockpile because as you know, that stuff expires, right? So it's a revolving door of it's just not a one-time purchase that can just sit there forever, like national oil reserves. Like that stuff has to constantly be replenished.
And, yeah, you made a great point in that most medical supplies, you would think there's no way that has an expiration date on it, and then you look at it and you're like, bruh, 2025, come on.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many times I've looked at like an NPA and I'm like, expired? How does a tube that I put in someone's nose expire? And then like the more I think about it, I'm like, it's probably not like this plastic tube that I'm about to shove in this unconscious person's nose that's expiring,
Exactly.
but probably like the packaging in of itself that's like guaranteeing that
Yeah.
that equipment is sterile. I never asked the question though, so I could be 100% wrong. So feel free to live fact check me on that. Like, nope, the tube in
No,
the nose
I
is
do
what is
believe you are
expiring, not the
correct.
packaging.
From like I said, I please fact check me, but I do believe you are correct in that it's oftentimes the packaging that it can't guarantee a sterile package after a certain point. Therefore, the product becomes, not sterile, not clean. So
I don't know how your hospitals, ERs, urgent cares that you've worked before in the past have operated, but I've also noticed, at least for the agencies I work for, there's been an increased uh, realization of paying attention to their bench stock because there was so much waste before in the past where things are expiring in like 6 months, basically 2 quarters, 2 calendar quarters from now, and they get a new shipment in and they just throw that stuff away. And I'm like, hey, I get that it's getting close to expiring, but like, maybe if you properly bag and tag these things, you could keep them a little bit closer to the expiration date. And even after they expire, or even if you want to be really sure and you want to like remove them from circulation a quarter before they expire, even though anyone should be checking the 5 rights
yeah,
before giving and using anything, right? But if you're worried about something being expired, uh maybe move that over to your training stock. Like, why is this just being just disposed of and not getting any
yeah,
use, any
yeah. No,
mental reps
that's
out of this equipment?
a great point. Well, and the fact too is that, I mean, if you know when an expiration date is, yeah, offer it to an agency, offer it, for maybe like mission trips, or there's a lot of good you can do with equipment that is nearing the end of its shelf life. So you're right in that.
So I know you said you didn't really get involved in COVID. Have you noticed like any best practices in the field or anything that have changed or evolved the status quo because of COVID? Because I mean, realistically, now we're on year three of COVID, right? But I'm pretty sure for the most part, most of the world, life's back to normal. So I feel like we're in the stage now where we can fully grasp and see the fallout and what
Yeah, of
has really
course.
changed because of that.
So in terms of like practice, I mean, still wearing an N95, still wearing at least a face shield, and then if you want to wear like a gown, and gloves, of course, that's still best practice just for all the different ways that you can catch COVID. It's particularly a like an airborne disease. So I mean, if you're around someone, within the 6 feet, if they talk towards you or accidentally cough on you or sneeze on you, then that's a way to get it. So by wearing a face shield, helps protect those droplets from most of them from coming close to you. The N95 does not let particles in, and when properly fit tested, does not let particles go out. So anything you breathe is, supposed to be clean. So that, along with the face shield, I mean, even if someone coughs on you, you know, I don't really even, you know, like I say, thank God I'm wearing a face shield, that sort of thing. Um,
Yeah, but the face shield is like so beta. It doesn't look good. Like you could wear a mask, you could try to hide your ugliness, but like a face shield, oh, you look ugly as fuck. Like especially like in stores I've went to, I've seen people just wear a face shield, no mask. So I'm like, what the actual fuck do you think you're doing? Like, like you think like a face shield is gonna save you from COVID, but clearly
yeah,
like you're just letting all that air come in. Like a mask
yeah,
isn't physically fit to your mouth right now.
Well, they
So I don't know
might
how you
be,
expect to be
well,
safe.
at least I'm trying something. So you never know. But yeah, it's quite the fashion show. Where I work. Because I see people with
Oh, yeah.
COVID almost every day at work. So I'm very used to wearing an N95, a face shield. If someone's really really hacking, a gown, and of course gloves every time. So it's I have caught a few people. Like when I like open the door to bring them in, like they chuckle, and I'm thinking to myself, are these fucking people really laughing at me right now, or is something else funny? I never say. You know what? I know they are, but I'm
Oh,
just
they were
like,
definitely
oh
laughing at you.
god, maybe they're laughing about something else and not about how I look right now. I know I'm lying to myself, but whatever gets you through the day.
Right?
Just walk out, throw your hands
What's
up.
so
You know what?
funny?
I'm not helping now.
So
You're on your own now, bucko. Too funny. Is there anything that you think, looking back at it now, that like starting off they got wrong? Like I feel like I was reading a lot in the beginning of a lot of people being intubated, and then it turned out that maybe a lot of those people shouldn't have been intubated, and it seemed like they really took a general
Yeah, so like I said,
downturn
I can't
because
like
of it.
talk specifically. I was never in a situation where, we had to intubate people. Um, but just generally speaking, being intubated is a very tough thing on the body. It should only, and like I said, not a doctor, don't take me for medical advice, but its purpose is kind of like a last resort sort of thing typically. So if you can avoid that, obviously you never want to just go right to the last resort. But it was a situation in that, you know, people didn't know what to do. I mean, it's it's as if something completely new that no doctor has ever really studied before just automatically comes in and starts just putting everyone, in respiratory distress and, cardiac problems in a hospital. And that I could not imagine working um, on a COVID floor or the ICU or the ER during that time. Because, especially in the beginning, because there was not a whole lot of people didn't really know what to do, So you do the best that you can. You obviously converse and wait on the science and stuff like that. But when man, it was pretty crazy there for a little while in terms of just trying to like you said, trying to maybe not intubate people, and so I guess I can't speak specifically, but they yeah, intubation in general is that's a tough thing for the human body. So especially then you're sick on top of it. It's you know difficult.
What are your thoughts on we temporarily we briefly hit on this, I think in the last episode, the polarization, the politicalization of COVID over the last 3 years, because I find it very, very funny that Operation Warp Speed to fund the research on mRNA vaccines for COVID and get them pushed out was a Trump administration initiative. But now I think most people can agree, if you have somebody who is right of center and you were a betting man and you had to say, are they pro or anti-vax? Are they going to be anti-vax? And if you had somebody left of center and you were a betting man, you had to say, are they pro or anti-vax? They're
You
pro-vax.
know what? The easy answer would be to agree with that, but I'm gonna take the hard road and say I have, and the people I see for 10, 15, 20 minutes. So of course I never dive into politics. I don't really dive into politics in general, to be quite honest with you. But you know, people of all walks of life, make comments about, the vaccine, and, as a nurse, as a medical professional, I mean, we follow the science, and there's new science coming out every day. So it's it'd be kind of tough for me to agree to that generalization, but in me saying that there have been people from all walks of life, and from what I'm gathering is their political view, but I mean, I don't actually talk with these people, so it's like, you're just generalizing, and that's, not great either. So, but, the 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 purpose, and especially a nurse. I mean, I can't give medical advice. Nobody should be taking my medical advice seriously. Like, it's very you're taught in school to follow the science. There's a reason people do the science. You agree and follow the science because there's been multiple trials of its safety and efficacy of, all different things. I'm not just talking about vaccines. I'm talking about like protocols. I'm talking about like wound care, medications, So, from my standpoint is you got to follow the science. And the science, like I said, is new and evolving every day. So
Now, when science is new and evolving, and you give people the benefit of the doubt that they have general best interest in mind, what do you think about mandates on vaccines for certain things? Because, like you said, it is new, right, and constantly evolving. This is the first time in the modern era we've dealt with something like this. So, is it reasonable to require people to take something? MRA vaccines have been around for a while. This isn't exactly brand new technology, but to my knowledge, it is new, to which the 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 timeline and the scale of everything, given the severity of the event, right, to push these things out and to get them to the public and have emergency use authorization, and then for different employers and stuff to then mandate it. You're not forcing them. They could always say no, but I mean, realistically, if you're talking about someone's paycheck, that's basically economic coercion, right? Like, are you going to pay your mortgage, or are you going to be sleeping in a box in 2 weeks?
Yeah, and that's such a difficult, thing. It's that the 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 mandate itself, I'm just, this is pure guessing. I've already mentioned I'm not a huge politics guy to begin with, but I think the mandates came through for the safety of everyone. In the beginning, like I said, everyone was scared. It's, they thought of it as like a more of like a public health thing, which I think COVID has really kind of um, brought into the spotlight, in that a lot of people, maybe we weren't ready for a pandemic. Maybe we were, maybe we weren't. I mean, it's tough to say now, but maybe in 5-10 years time we'll have all these new studies and these new data, and where we could say, wow, maybe what we did during the pandemic was good. Or maybe they could say, man, we swung out, or we swung and missed completely. So it's really hard to say now, in terms of like, what was the efficacy of certain things like mandates and stuff like that. Time will tell. And it's such a highly politicized thing. It's just, I think it came from the government, from what I'm ascertaining, and then obviously it came down to states, and now it's, I believe now it's a lot up to states now in terms of like mandates and what have you. So I like to believe that they were doing it for the interest of public health, and that's kind of like where I stand on it. So
So when it comes to public health, what are your thoughts then on where do you draw the line on mandates? Because for decades now, obesity and complications related to obesity has killed hundreds of thousands of adults and adolescents each year. What pop culture is almost leaning into it. Thick is the new beautiful, body positivity, love at all sizes and all weights. You know what I mean? I remember in middle school and high school, it was a popular joke to say, if she ain't 380, she ain't a lady. Well, in today's day and age, Vogue and all these different magazines and stuff, if she ain't 380, she anorexic. And I'm just thinking, honey, you're 5'2", 380. I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. You got a whole extra me hiding in there somewhere. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, so that's like a whole different conversation in terms of like the body positivity and the body image and stuff. I mean, that's like you said, is kind of more like pop culture. And I mean, mandates. I mean, for me, I kind of just went with them. I kind of just agreed with them. I don't really know yet. Like looking back, was it the right thing to do? I'm not sure. I mean, it's easy to kind of get politicized and make really rash generalizations, but I think for me at the time, I think it to a certain extent was the right thing to do. But like I said, time will tell. I mean, they're doing studies more and more every day about efficacy and like did it really how bad was COVID when if you've had COVID before, if you haven't had COVID before. So it's unfortunately it's hard to make a generalization about it now because I mean I'm still seeing COVID. People it's gone down for sure a lot, but I mean I still see it every single day. So it's really hard to tell at the moment about very big things that the government did and how it worked out. You know what I mean?
I hear you. Well, we're pushing up on almost an hour and a half here, so I think this is a good place to cut it off for now. Especially before we go too deep down the body positivity hole, and the blue haired fatty trolls come to before they come to cancel me. You know what I'm saying? A pretty fit guy. I could probably take 3 or 4 of them, but if one of them gets a hold of me, it's game over.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a great time. Yeah, and anytime you guys want or need me again, you know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah. Next time we'll have to have you in person. Maybe go on another pig hunt or something. Just nature of the beast with the job.
Yes.
Moving times coming up here soon. Maybe we'll be in an interesting new place to visit. I know you guys got to move coming up too, so maybe vice versa.
Hey,
maybe we'll be in your new place doing the next
that'd be okay
episode.
with me. So.
Right. Thanks for coming on again. This has been episode 4 of Pondering Pennies. See you all guys next time.